What's up, everybody? Richard Dolan here for a courageous conversation.
Well, man, today you're right. There's no going back.
How do you feel the weight of that desire?
I have been there for a while.
The story's still being written, and you cut the story short. As they say, I'm playing with house money.
They said, neo-fascist.
You can't imagine, Richard. I've heard everything now.
But I'll tell you what, you ain't never buying your time back. Value your time.
Nothing can humiliate me. I've already done that.
He said, you taught me there was more to life than pain, and that kind of opened the door for thousands and thousands of kids.
Like, you just show up no matter what. This is an opportunity to kind of delve into yourself and actually pull out what you might have in there.
It forced me to think about life after basketball.
And it's funny because people need to laugh.
You just pass it through, brother.
Once you start a courageous conversation, there ain't ever going back to an ordinary one. Richard Dolan here for a courageous conversation. Thanks to Bronze Studios. I'm sitting here with my dear friend, my favorite artist by choice, and not by chance, none other than the legendary Russell Young. How are you, sir? Good to see you, handsome.
I'm really good. I'm really good. Enjoying a beautiful Southern California day. So
I know. It's so difficult to talk about yet another sunny day in some parts of the world. We won't get into details as to who or where, but I mean, sun is just one of those often hoped for and rarely seen kind of phenomenons.
That's why I moved to California from Northern England.
That's a smart move. No, hey, listen, for people watching this, listening in, taking notes, and wanting to learn more about Russell Young, I mean, this conversation's got really two parts. I love to talk about who you are, Russell, because I've come to not only call you a friend, but again, truly the most highly collected artist I have in my life, being a huge fan of art and artistic impressions and expressions. But talking about you, what had you become an artist and what drives your inspiration for creativity and collaborating with the earth, its elements, and all the cool things that are at your disposal to wield your magic. But then there's this other conversation, the conversation that really intrigues me about what happens when an artist has done all there is to do, has conquered all that they set out to get done, and now wants to really reinvent the rest of their lives. And we're going to talk about that as well. So why don't we start with you? You know, Russell, of all the things you could have been, I know that you were a photographer. I know that you captured the images of some of the most iconic, legendary, most epic musicians and artists of a time that are iconic of the 60s, the 70s, and even the 80s. And of course, I'm not trying to date you. But at the same time, I got to pay homage. And you made this shift into real contemporary art. What had you become an artist, would you say?
I mean, I was an artist at 3 years old. I knew I was an artist. I'd be on my aunt's floor, scribbling away, doing these scary abstract trees. And then I got distracted by the glamour and just the beautiful life of the music business for 15 years. Got to photograph George Michael's face sleeve, and I mean, just Dylan, Springsteen, everybody. And then I sort of fell out of love with the music industry. It was the music that was coming around. I directed 100 music videos, and it fell out of love with me. And I went and sat on a hill in Tuscany, meditated for a month, and came back and went, I'm going to do what that 3-year-old wanted to do. So that set me on a path, which has been a spectacular path. And sort of coming out of the pandemic, it's made me realize that I've got to go back to what that 3-year-old wanted to do, which he didn't think about anything other than just creating beautiful things that I didn't know it was affecting people, but my aunts and my uncles would like look and in awe, and and I'm like, well, that's easy because it's what I do. I see in a different way to everybody else. And so out of the pandemic, I think every artist has to really go back and find themselves and find out what is at the core of them. So what we've been talking about, our conversations are always inspirational. Sitting in Miami in December was great. That whole day we spent together, and it just starts to get everything sparking. And
it was so romantic, you and I just shivering in December on the beach of Miami. Wasn't that fantastic?
Cocktails on the beach.
That's right. But on that note, and as you're taking a swig of water, let me just call some attention to something. I mean, you're not just talking about a child who's always been destined to be creative, Russell. I mean, your art is in the most classic and prestigious galleries on the planet. from Taglietta to Halcyon and to incredible others around the world. I mean, your work could be found and has been published so in the hallways and on the walls of the homes for Drake, Lenny Kravitz, just to name a couple. And I know that there's a plethora of others, actors, movie producers, musicians, and others who really appreciate art. What would you say if you were to guess, given you're the artist that most are collecting, what is it about your art that resonates with those who would appear to us just mortals, already hyper creative folks? What's it about your art that they love collecting?
I think there's a graphic nature to my work. I use this, it's like my signature diamond dust. So the painting becomes three-dimensional. I mean, I put an incredible amount of time into the work. It's all hand-pulled. Me and my master printer, six other master printers were all crawling over the ground. It's a very dirty business to get this beautiful, iconic image. I sort of somehow inside of me make people look better than they actually are in reality. Elizabeth Taylor came into my gallery in LA, and she was amazed by herself. This diamond dusted picture of herself, and the gallery calls me and says, you know, Elizabeth Taylor wants to buy this painting of herself. I'm like, give it to her. You know, it's like, you're like, wow, you know. And then we had a conversation. We were going to have lunch and things like that. But she was just like, she's like, I can't believe, you know, she said, that's how the world sees me. It's not really how I am sometimes. She said, but that's me at my pinnacle. That's where we've always been wanting to put me. And she said, you just encapsulated me. And I mean, the diamond dust is just a beautiful layer. It's like a sculptural veil layer over everything.
It is. And you know, just admittingly, that's actually how I came to learn of you and how I fell in love with your work. I don't know if I've ever told you the story, but to provide you a little bit of animation, because I think it might be a great segue into the bigger conversation that is really quite inspiring, and it's got me quite excited, to be quite honest with you, about what comes next in your life, your career, and of course your legacy. But I would sit often in a restaurant in my hometown, and in that restaurant, it's a very prestigious steakhouse, a traditional steakhouse. A friend of mine owns it, and his partner would often serve me, and that's just a beautiful thing. So often over his shoulder, Michael is his name, I would notice the Marilyn Monroe piece adorning the wall with the proper lighting that just sat off to the side of a beautiful grand piano. And it would be that thing that there's an allure about it. There was this mystique about it where I felt a connection to it because it sparkled the way I would want to, and it would be adorned by anyone that walked in there, because they would always be taken aback by this piece. And I found that my attraction to it was actually quite visceral. And so I think, so for me, and by form of telling you that story, I want to ask you this question. I sense that that's why celebrities love collecting your work, because as much as it might be a really great artist's expression of who you're capturing, it also creates a reflection for the collector, for the person who's putting it on their wall, where I see that work and I come to life in some way. Do you see the connection, and was that intentional?
Yeah, I mean, it is intentional. I mean, you've got to set out to get some emotion out of people. I mean, you've got to get that pull and that drive. And yeah, I mean, I see sometimes people just stand there and look and look and look and look and look, and it just makes me smile. Wow, I think it was probably when I was about 17, my first trip to New York, and I went to, I think it was MoMA, and there was this Robert Motherwell abstract painting with these huge bold strokes and everything there, and I'm standing just looking at it, being drawn into it, and then suddenly I realize I have an erection. That's what art's meant to do, right?
Right. Well, I'm going to start standing in front of art.
There, you know, and I get, you know, Instagram, you get, you know, sort of people making comments, and you're like, I don't know. I mean, you know, I you know, it's magic just watching people, you know, that reaction.
I'm just making notes here. Art must cause erection. Got it. Yeah. Okay, good. So we're here with lessons on how to. We're here with Russell Young on learning how to appreciate fine art and collectible goods. Erection is definitely one of the classifying acts of good appreciation. But all kidding aside, I mean, one of the things I love a lot about you, which again is also a natural segue into the bigger conversation, is you're so accessible. You know, I've had the opportunity of interviewing you before. We've collaborated much. Of course, I'm delighted and honored and blessed to call you a friend. And every time talking to you, there's something about you I discover that inspires me to discover something quite different about myself. Do you think that's because you're a creative or connected creature? Because I have a sense of your answer. I know what I would project, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think.
I'm a storyteller. I'm a traveler. I'm a storyteller. I mean, you know, I've told you before, I go out, you know, out here is the ocean. I swim out there a mile, just a mile straight out, 3 o'clock in the morning, pitch dark. Sometimes I do it when there's a full moon. I go up in the mountains hiking for 24 hours. I sleep on the freeways. I'm out, I'm doing things. I'm just always active. I'm just always engaged in the present. I think a lot of it has to do because I'm adopted, if that makes sense. Of my 3 kids, my 2 youngest are adopted as well, and I see it in them. There's an independent spirit, and you have, you know, you probably know who your great-grandparents are. And yeah, do you know who your great-grandparents are?
I do. I'm not quite sure, but I'm interviewing you here.
I have no idea who my history is. So I moved to America. I consider myself to be living and painting on the edge of America, literally. You know, my studio's just up the road, right on the edge of America. And I sort of ran away from England and the grime in Northern England and the negativity, and came out to this optimistic California because it suited my optimistic nature. But I am driven by these stories, and because I'm adopted, I don't have libraries full of archives or books or great aunts to show me pictures and whatever. I do not know where I came from. I do not know the 2 people who made me. So therefore, I have all this open shelf space to put all these stories. And so I feel driven always to go out to the Southwest and to the deserts and travel. And, you know, I surf out here all the time. I go riding motorbikes, and I'm just engaged and, you know, just engaged in the West, the Southwest, and American culture. So I'm able, with the characters, the great cast of characters and icons that I use in my paintings, I'm able to sort of look at them without a history, and they become my history. And I think the 15 years of taking, you know, images, photographs for record sleeves and whatever, that was me sort of collecting this archive. But it's still only a few shelves out of 50 shelves are filled. And so, you know, I still have that energy. I still have that desire to go out and create.
I think, and what this now brings us to finally, is I'm trying to tease it out of you, and we're in a conversation with none other than the Russell Young, is that there's been an era for self-discovery. We saw that in the 60s and the 70s during the hippie era, if I'm allowed to say that right now, where people through really just experimental drugs and even the type of psychedelic kind of music was just a matter of just love is good and love is great and love is abound. But now we're heading into an era, in a post-pandemic life, in a reality following crisis, where I sense that people want to, in fact, engage in a sense of rediscovery, because they've had time, but they've not been connected. They've been able to stay still, but they've not been among many. And so you really embody the spirit of what it's like to just really get out and get into the earth, get under freeways. And I sense, and I've got a good strong hunch about this, and I want us to talk about this now, Russell, is that I feel that people could vicariously rediscover themselves through you discovering others. Does that resonate with you?
No, that totally does. I mean, I think as an artist, if you haven't looked at yourself and changed, you're a piece of shit, really, and you've missed a massive opportunity. I mean, I was doing these huge abstract paintings, like 10 feet by 15 feet, during the pandemic. And, you know, the cops would stop me every day because I wasn't meant to travel. And I'm like, you know, come up and have some bourbon at my studio, come, you know, do this. And, you know, just like sort of engaging them, and just, I was driven to go create. And out of that creativity, I found that all my friends who were artists had all remained at home and had done these like tiny little paintings for the first time. And I had gone out and done these expansive paintings. And yes, it is about storytelling and connecting and inspiring, right? I mean, anytime you can inspire people, it's a wonderful thing. I mean, you do that. I love to do that. And, You love to see the way people then take that mentorship or that advice and move it on. We all have mentors. We all, mentor people, whether we like it or not. People are always influenced by, other artists, and, it's this like whole line, this whole history, whole lineage.
No, I won't debate that. I mean, I think at this time in our existence, a lot more of us are far more alive and willing to be a contribution, to help others, to connect, to help people rediscover. But when it comes to using Russell Young as the medium and vehicle to exploring the world through a different lens, I know that I can walk into MoMA, as a place of reference that you, of course, last saw in Erection. When you think of a place like that, I know if I walked in there with you, you would have a different experience than I would, because I would look at things differently than you would. But I would appreciate being able to look through those set of eyes as well, because there's things you're going to appreciate that I'm just not simply going to appreciate. Do you see the point?
Yeah, I mean, I've only really just got on with life. About 4 or 5 years ago, I realized that nobody could see the detail or see the way I see. And I was like, oh, so I just have to think like me. I don't have to think like anybody else or try to see through anybody else's eyes. I have this like amazing long vision. When I'm surfing, I see the waves like way before everybody else. So I start paddling, and then all the other surfers paddle because they know I can see the set coming. So it's sort of translating that sort of vision through. Yeah, we can go and look at a Jackson Pollock in MoMA, and I can show you things there, but you will see it differently. And that way of looking, that way of inspiration is I don't know, it's a magical thing to see people open up when they are exposed to something differently. I mean, if you talk about artists, and I go to other artist studios, artists are quite protective of their studio, of their process. Somebody like Jeff Koons has been filmed in his studio, and you never see him with a paintbrush or doing anything. He is instructing a larger, wider body of people to fill his work. I'm very hands-on. I get in and down and dirty. And, I was thinking about what we were talking about with the artist and artist sort of project, in that if you go and talk to an artist in the studio, I think you get a slightly reserved, false impression of what the work is really about. I think it's interesting to film the process. When I put anything up on my very obscure Instagram account, I'll get 10,000 views if I do a 5-10 second thing of me and my master printer crawling across the ground, hand pulling a screen. I put up a picture of a flower or anything else, and it's a very few views, right? It's an interesting thing. So that tells me people want to see the physical act of the making, the magic. How is the magic created? However, the problem there is when you interview an artist in their studio, they go like a sea anemone. They go like this. So the thought is you're doing, say you're interviewing an artist like Sterling Ruby. He has his massive studio in downtown LA. Incredible artist, very interesting. But taking him out of his environment and maybe taking him to a really rundown East LA Mexican pool hall restaurant bar, playing pool, and then interviewing whilst you're playing pool, or on the car journey like James Corden does, right? His stuff is incredible. It's in a little car, but he gets more out of those interviews in the car than he does when he's sitting in his studio with an audience. You could interview somebody in an elevator, put the alarm on, get the elevator stuck, right, now we're going to talk, or whatever it is, I mean, so it's taking artists out. I know when I'm taken out of my environment, that something interesting happens. You can go on a motorbike trip out into the desert. You can go surf, whatever it is. So there's this journey from A to B that relaxes the artist, that, because most artists are not very good at, communicating verbally. We communicate visually, So that was my thought there with how artists communicate and what artists can convey and show people.
Yeah, well, and by the way, one of the things I want to just revisit is also your relationship to the statement you made, which was hands off. You know, when you think about hands off, what's intriguing about hands off is that's just been the existence that mankind's had for the past couple of years. Is
Yeah.
that, you know, COVID-19 arrives, or the coronavirus is now before us, and the whole world goes into self-isolation and self-regulation and I mean self-orientation and distancing and all the other rest of it. As we all emerge back to a reality unusual, people are really wanting to get reacquainted with the things that they've missed and not had an eye for. So it feels to me that, let's just say there was a show where you were able to in fact tour the country, and I do mean America, coast to coast, top to bottom, bottom to top, looking for some of the most innovative, disruptive, and really very coolly connected artists. And you're not looking for the artists that are going to be the most collectible, or the ones who are going to be the most valuable, or the next Banksy, if it were, and the greatest little gimmick coming next. It's just real people crafting their real magic, doing it for the love and passion for life that it is. I think there's something very visceral about that for people right now to get reconnected to living. Would you agree?
I agree totally. I mean, it sounds, and the thought would be a bit like On the Road, Jack Kerouac, right? He's in a car with a few friends traveling across America. It's a simple story, but it's genius. So it's it's on the road. It's out there, and it's getting people reacquainted with the possibilities of everything there. We have all looked at these two screens too much. I think before a year ago, I'd only ever done one Zoom call in my life. And now it's too frequent. Most people just want to do a phone call. I always say, if you want to talk to me, I at least want to see your face.
That's right. But you know what I love about this is, because we've jammed about this before, where we talked about the Anthony Bourdain of this conversation, God bless him. I mean, what we loved about Anthony was, he was brave enough to go to places I wouldn't dare go visit. He would eat foods I wouldn't dare try. And he would talk to people that I don't know if I would be quite willing to talk to, nor get a lot out of. But through him and that experience and his courageously committed self to doing that, I'm getting to learn a lot. Does that resonate with you as sort of a...
No, it's inspired you living vicariously, right? And then hopefully a few people go out there and do this, right? Do this shit. Go change something about their life. No, I love the fact of a journey, because you're putting yourself in situations you don't know what's going to happen. And that's the nice thing about coming out of the studio, going into the real world. I mean, I was in Moscow. I found these photographs of me with a Mohican, dreadlocks, in 1982, and I was in Moscow for a month, the week that Brezhnev died. And I didn't care that I put myself in there. I got stopped by the guards. I got half stripped in Red Square, and by guards. They said, "What are you?" And I said, "Punk. I'm a punk." Right? And they're like, "I don't understand punk." So I said, "A new wave." I thought they might understand that. And they said, "Neo-fascist." And then I thought that was the last I was going to be seen, and with these three girls, one's dressed as a cowgirl. And, I don't know what the hell we thought we were doing in 1982 in Moscow. But we put ourselves in that situation. And out of that came all these amazing stories, And Anthony Bourdain is totally a hero. But he puts himself in that situation, if you watch the making of it, you get one take with it, right? One take, that's it, move on, because this is reality. Yeah. You don't, you have a good camera crew around you because you do that, directing 100 music videos. Some artists would allow you one take. Frank Sinatra was famous, photographers would take a picture, go, "Oh, beautiful." And he go, "Right, that's it," and walk away. And they went, "What? I need like 10 minutes. And he's like, "No, you've got a picture. Goodbye." So I like that about Bourdain, that he followed through. He was what he was on the screen. It's like, no bullshit. You do this. Let's all be professionals. Move on.
That's right. Well, and we're not talking about reality TV. The reality TV was, the you're hired, you're fired, you're off, you're on. Good luck, pack your bags, you're leaving the house. We're talking about unscripted, and unscripted is where it's just untethered, unhinged, real TV. And what's amazing that I want to capture right now, especially for those who are watching this, is it feels to me that as we enter into this new reconnection to living again, is that we have to be taught or re-inspired on how to look for and create for ourselves new possibilities. And what better person to be able to go out there and basically go out there and do a bit of a knee and hand crawl to say, hey, let's go look for them together. But for you to be charged with the mission of finding those that actually find them often in the world of art and expression. Because it sounds to me, Russell, I want to ask you this question. It feels like reigniting people's imagination might be one of the great things that come out of this show. It's being, wow, I never thought of that. And I never could imagine this, or how about that? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, and not only somebody watching the show, but for myself, right? So I go meet artists I've never met before, and I'm like, fuck, look at the way they do that. Look at that passion. Look at that, you know. So if I'm not inspired, then that inspiration is not going to come out. That's not going to come through. So to me, that's a really exciting part about it.
And I want to back end. I didn't mean to speak on top of you,
right?
but that's Zoom for you because we're talking over each other. But I want to say something is that because you're passionate about finding the answers, it's real. And it's that very elusive authenticity that most people look for in cuisine, in experiences, in vacations, and relationships and communication, in film, in art is just true, authentic curiosity and engagement.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously the thing you forgot there, that's the magic sprinkle dust is cocktails and good bars and drink, which is what Dane was a little buzzed, right? We talked about doing this with a couple of margaritas in, right? So next time we should do that, right? Just Absolutely. To see how it gets loosened. You know, I don't sometimes with alcohol comes dishonesty, you know, but sometimes it makes a more interesting story. I have a friend who's quite a well-known actor, and he's godfather to one of my children, and he was telling a story a few years ago, and this story was fascinating. And it was going on 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. And then I realized I was at the story. I knew what the story was, but I said to him, he said, no. He said, Russell, he said, always the best stories have a little lying and embellishment in them, this story had a massive amount of embellishment, but that's what storytelling is. And, that's what a little buzz sometimes creates a little bit more interesting content.
That's entertainment. But, according to my research, and I want to share this for those who are watching it, especially as we've got Russell Young here, who I think might be the greatest champion for what's possible, who can reignite the imagination of those who are returning to the living, so to speak, in a life after pandemic, is this, my friend, it's been noted that those who watched and observed the cooking shows and the cooking travel shows, where you see the host or a pair of hosts and they head into someone's home in the hills of Italy or into the beautiful valleys of this wine region, and they're sitting at a table and with family members and they're being hosted, but they're wining and they're dining, they're chatting and they're filming. And here it comes. People who are watching that are projecting themselves in there. Yes. They feel that they're a part of the conversation. They've watched the past 22 minutes unfold that led to this beautiful gathering of just beautiful souls. And those at home streaming on their device or watching it online are saying, gosh, I feel like I'm actually there. And it sounds like that would be a really remarkable, noble quest to capture that experience that leading to a cocktail comes the celebration of life and discovery. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes total sense. I mean, the inspiration, nobody is going to go, everybody goes, I'm going to make that at home. Nobody ever goes and makes that at home, but they do take the atmosphere. They do take the feeling, and hopefully they invite 10 friends around the next weekend to come share a meal with them, to come share conversations. And that, I've got this nice big table here. I've got the ocean here. I'm looking forward to hosting like 20 people. I've had this place for a year, and it's like 2 people will come at a time, 3 people, maybe 10 people came for my birthday recently, but I'm looking forward to really good dinner parties and getting that connection again. How does that work? I mean, have we got to relearn that?
But it's also true. It sounds like what you're going to be is the catalyst for transporting right? Being able to transport yourself into an environment where others can vicariously through you relearn, recalibrate, and reclaim their right to living life. Because hey, we're all living, but not all of us are alive.
No, I mean, and the person that makes you connect, the people that inspire you can range from, I've obviously been, spent a few days with Bob Dylan, right? Who's most, or Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen wanted me to take his photographs, gave me a special place. I was like, Bruce Springsteen knows who I am, and Bruce Springsteen's in love with my photography. And then, so you have amazing conversations with these people because there is a dedication that they put in, and there's something special about them and their talent. But just recently, I was walking up the beach here, carrying my surfboard, and there was a guy on the steps that lead down to the beach, and he was reading a Bible. And I said, there's a lot in that book, isn't there? And he was clearly homeless, and he smiled at me, he laughed and whatever. And then I went surfing, came back out about an hour and a half later. I said, what are you reading? And he said, Revelation. So I quoted a few of Revelations to him. We started a conversation. We talked for at least an hour, and he was the one who told me where to go sleep under the freeway under here. There's a freeway under here where you can sleep right up underneath it. And when it rains, the water pours down it. You get these huge, like 15, 20-foot waves smashing. It's the best view in town, But we started talking, and then about 2 hours later, I'm driving up, and he's walking up the street. So I pick him up. He's looking for a shower. I take him to the public shower at the beach, and we had this amazing conversation, right? So I can have an amazing conversation with Bruce Springsteen. You can have an amazing conversation with a homeless person. And his story was that his parents had both died fairly recently. He'd been with his aunt and uncle in Iowa, and he hitchhiked from Iowa to the coast. He got to Ventura, and he went, do I go south for the winter or north for the winter? And he turned right and came up north. And so he came past where I'm always all the time and where my studio is. So there was this one little thread of a story, which was incredibly inspirational for me, because I'm like, yes, I need, yes, I need to get out more. Yes, I need to walk and travel. And, I go up in the mountains for 24 hours, and I think if we take somebody along on a journey like that, there are bears and mountain lions and all that sort of shit up there, but it gets like really visceral. It gets right inside of you. There's an energy that comes out. And whether it's a dinner party or talking to a homeless person or talking to Bruce Springsteen, these are all stories, It's all like that Jack Kerouac thing. What's magic about that book is the encounters, right? The way that things cross-pollinate and characters come and go. And, it's a point, the journey seems very random and meandering across America.
No, I love it. I love it.
That would be a perfect,
No, I love it. I know our signal might be a little bit slagging because, of course, you're on California time. So it's like, dude, relax. We're on California time. But it feels like to me that you're going to help inspire people to re-engage life. And I love that. Let me ask you one final question, Russell. Let's just suppose we get a show up and running, and you're touring and traveling, connecting with people in a meaningful and very impactful way. Do you feel you're going to become a different artist as a result? Your work might shift, change, or alter. Do you project that?
It has to, because I would work on the road. When I travel, I go to Marfa, Texas a lot. And I normally go there, visit. I have a friend there. And her and I will sit and talk for nights on end. And it's just very inspirational, just amazing conversation. But I do want to go there and work for a week, for a month, because I know the work I create there will be different to anything else I've done in my life. So it's a way of taking me out of my studio, out of my comfort zone. I find actually it's strange. The other day I was driving. So when I go to my studio, it's to complete the work. I think, but it's to actually do the process and put the pieces together and stitch and sew and glue these huge paintings together. But the other day I'm driving on the freeway with one of my kids, and we're going to, something he needs to be at, and I pull off the freeway. And I start writing for 15 minutes, and he went, oh, I'm going to be late, aren't I? I'm like, yes, you are, because it's at those strange moments that, you know, you don't know when inspiration comes. The last place it comes sometimes comes is the studio. So it's when you're out in the world and whatever. So traveling, yes, of course, you're going to get influences, and you're going to see a process or some little piece of magic that another artist does, or a way he holds. I draw, as you know, with both hands, right? So I draw sort of symmetrically, and I draw with both hands. You know, I never draw like this. It's always with two hands. So, you know, somebody might see that me doing that, or you see some little thing, that piece of magic that somebody does that sticks with you. You can't help be influenced. You know, we're all, you know, as every painting that I've ever done, each one informs the next one. Paintings go backwards and forwards. I love to know where all the collectors are in the world, but artists are always influenced by other artists. You know, I mean, hopefully you take you know, when you come to a fork in the road, you take the hardest path, and then another fork, the hardest path, and you find yourself, you know, in your own language, in your own place. But, you know, it's, you know, we all look at art, we all see things, you know, we're all influenced.
No, absolutely.
So yeah, influence is a wonderful thing.
Look, I'm a big fan of who you are, but I'm going to be a bigger advocate for what's to be. And I know doing a show and doing it the way we talked about is not just a real radical way of using and leveraging you as the medium, but helping unleash the very artists and people who are in the world of expressed arts to really come to life. So I know you're a man of power, but I want to also acknowledge you for being a real great human of grace. I mean, you are such an incredible soul, such a huge heart. And that's why I'm just so delighted to be here with you and chat about this, because I know that it's not just a possibility, but that it's a probability. And with some certainty.
I mean, nothing would make me happier than to go on this journey with you.
No, it'll be good. We'll have to just pack a lot of martinis, and I just know what happens if I take it to MoMA. I got to just stand back for a few hours and let you have your time. I'm just kidding. Hey, send my love to your kids. Send my love to Aubrey. And before I let you go, I'll just sign off by saying, folks, this has been a real wonderful, courageous conversation with the one and only Russell Young. You can check him out online through Instagram and other social media handles. If you don't follow his art, if you don't follow this legend, then you're going to miss out, because the best of who he is yet to come.